Good afternoon, Alistair.
Hi, Richard. Yes, good to see you again.
Again. Alistair, at the last meeting of our olive branch, not so long ago, you brought a paper which was a text of two talks, I understand, given by the Reverend Dr. Andrew Callender. And the headings I've got are authentic and hopeful in Christ, beginning with what is wrong. And I think there's another heading, which I've lost. I printed it out. It's substantial. Ah, yes, here it is. Authentic and hopeful in Christ, beginning with what is life-giving. So I assume this was an important part of the assembly, the last Presbyterian General Assembly, keynote addresses. Would you please introduce the speaker and some
Right.
of the content of the
Yeah,
paper? Thanks.
sure. Okay, yes. Andrew is now recently retired as minister of St. James Presbyterian Church in New Plymouth. Before entering ministry, he taught economics. He's written texts in the sphere of economics and did a doctoral thesis on exploring a Christian conception of economic life, Barth's doctrine of creation, which I thought that's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
So, yes, he was the keynote speaker. I was at a We Talk yesterday, a We Gathering yesterday, and someone was talking about assembly and said that he'd been given the dead time of 1:30 to 2 to address assembly, which is the time everyone's had their lunch and are ready to be put to sleep. But once I heard bits of it, being because I was involved in the organising of the business, I didn't hear the whole text of each talk, but I heard bits of it, and I found it was interesting because I know he's come out of a more evangelical background, and I heard his opening, which starts a bit like this. Where have I got it? I've helpfully got it. Here we go. He started talking about appreciative inquiry. Now, I've met that in my dealings with Anglicans who use that as a model for ministry development, and getting you to appreciate what you're doing as the starting point for working out what you might do better, differently, or so forth. And the whole thing of giving life-giving ways of being and doing rather than focusing on what is wrong. Because if you focus on what is wrong, that pushes you into unproductive cycles of failure and shame. And I thought, yes, he's got that right. And then he says, but this hit me like a prophetic thunderclap. The evangelical tradition, as we've come to see it in New Zealand, often starts off on the premise that we are all sinners. And the moment you start with that perspective, you're immediately looking for correction of behaviour, either explicitly or implicitly, and by this whole thing of all have sinned, even though we can hark back to Augustine stealing pears as a teenager and a few other things besides. He suddenly thought, we've got it all wrong. If God is love, which is life-affirming, life-giving, then that places sin and sinning in a different perspective. So he talked. It was, I've enjoyed reading the paper more than the bits that I heard him speaking at the assembly. But then as I said, I didn't hear the whole piece. And he referenced a book that he wrote out of this experience of the prophetic thunderclap. And I can see that at one level, what he's done is he's tried to take out the key ideas from that he had uncovered as he was writing his book, which is called Finding Love, an Appreciative Inquiry into Christian Talk About Sin and Salvation. And he wants us to stop thinking about sin in terms of behavior, but rather sin and within the context of relationship, and the whole thing of affirmative inquiry works from that. And the key to good relationships is, of course, love. God is love, and he pulls that apart. So I would recommend it for anyone who's starting to think through, where does sin really sit? Because he's also recognised that within Kiwi society, people no longer relate to sin language in a and he says, our traditional description of ourselves is, I work hard, I love my family, I pay my taxes, I know I'm not perfect, but I haven't murdered anyone, ripped them off, or so what's this? Why am I a sinner?
Right.
And that as he says, the vast majority of nons and used to be Christians are rejecting that kind of sinful nature way of thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
And he develops from that premise.
He does.
I must say I enjoy that phrase, an appreciative inquiry. I hadn't realised that was a current phrase.
Yes.
I like the sound of that.
Yes. And yes, in my pastoral work at presbytery level, rubbing shoulders with Anglicans and Cooperative Ventures, when they've done their ministry reviews, I've seen it and how it doesn't sit comfortably with the questionnaires that we used to do for the so-called quinquennial visitations.
Thanks, Alistair. Well, look, we'll post the paper and put it on our site and hope that people might be drawn to this.
Yes,
who
indeed.
may not have heard Andrew speak at Assembly. So, thank you very much, Alistair.
That's okay. Right.